Hey everybody, welcome to another SaberSim strategy session. My name is Andy Baldacci. I'm the CEO of SaberSim, and I am joining Jordan Chan today, who's our head coach. And we're going to cover, this is honestly one of my favorite topics. It's the fastest way to build your NFL DFS bankroll. And it's going to be 3 simple rules that you can follow to double your ROI. And we have a ton of videos on how to improve your actual lineup building. And I definitely recommend watching those. I mean, if you're here on this strategy session, you're probably showing up to our office hours. You're checking out our videos. But again, like if you this is the first one you're tuning into, be sure to check out those other videos. But what we're going to cover today is, like, I'm not exaggerating when I say this will literally double your ROI in just 10 extra minutes a week. And this obviously sounds too good to be true, but if you stay with me for a few minutes, I promise I will not let you down. And I'm not going to guarantee that you're going to win every single night because nobody does. But what I'm going to share is going to increase your ROI while decreasing your variance, so you win more and you win more consistently. If you're only going to watch one DFS video this season, well, first, you probably should watch more than one. But if there's only one you're going to watch, this really should be it. So what I'm going to cover today, the first thing I'm going to do is just share what those rules are, give you some background information on those. Then I'll summarize it all by giving you a cheat sheet that's just going to cover every little thing that you need to know. So it's super easy for you to follow when you're building your lives, when you're registering for contests. And then I'll wrap up by actually following all these rules, by actually putting them in practice on DraftKings and showing you exactly what I'm going to do to implement this in the NFL Week 1 contests on DraftKings. But if you play on FanDuel, same process applies. That being said, let's just jump into it. And this, I guess, to give a little bit more context, this is all going to be about picking the right contests to play, because this is really what matters above all else. So you could be one of the top 10 players in the world, but if you're playing against the other 9 players who are better than you, you're going to lose on average. And that's really what it's all about, is finding the right spots. But the first rule is don't go broke. This is obviously pretty simple, but it's crucial because you can't beat DFS if you don't have a bankroll. So above all else, you have to protect your bankroll. And what I would say to do is figure out what that bankroll actually is. And it doesn't necessarily mean exactly how much money you have on the site. It really just means how much you're comfortable risking for DFS in general. And by that, though, it means, like, literally, if you lost all this money, would you be okay with that? We're going to give you the rules and the help and everything else to do our best to make sure that doesn't happen. But just conceptually, you want to be okay with losing this money. You want this to be the money that you are comfortable gambling with. And that is your bankroll. For this, what I always recommend is not risking more than 5% of your bankroll on a single slate. And honestly, this is a little bit aggressive. With the rules that we're going to talk about, we're going to show ways for you to lower your variance so that this is a manageable amount of risk to take, but it is still on the higher end. So this is a ceiling. This is not a minimum of risk, at least 5%. It's no more than 5%. And even if you're just risking a couple percent, that's fine. But that just means if your bankroll is $1,000, don't risk more than $50 on a slate. And additionally, don't wager more than 0.5% of your bankroll on a single entry. So with that $1,000 bankroll, don't play contests with a buy-in of more than $5. The second rule, spread out your risk. Outside of cash games, which I'm going to talk about a lot more in the next rule, every entry that you make should be filled with a unique lineup. Theoretically, in a perfect world, you'd want to put your top lineups in all of your contests. But when you do that, you're taking on a ton of risk because you just don't have that many lineups out there. If every 20 max contest you have has the same 20 lineups, every single entry has the same lineup, every 3 max and so on, you just don't have that much diversity. And so if those small group of players just don't perform, you're going to get completely wiped out. And that is the fastest way to decimate your bankroll. Even if those lineups are plus EV, even if you expect to have an ROI in the long run doesn't matter if you don't actually get there. And when you spread your risk across as many lineups as possible, you do technically sacrifice a little bit of your edge, a little bit of your ROI, but it's not that much, because if in a sport, especially on like a main slate for football, there are so many combinations. There are tons and tons and tons of profitable lineups out there. So if you're saying, all right, like, instead of just playing my top 20 across the board, I'm going to play my top 150. Yeah, you're technically sacrificing some edge, but it's just not enough to matter. And by doing that, you're gaining a lot by just giving yourself so many more chances at getting a big score and minimizing the likelihood of completely bricking a slate. Because again, the name of the game is not to go broke. And one of the best ways to do that is stay within your bankroll, but also spread out your risk by having a unique lineup in all of your contests. And then this last rule is really where this all comes together. And this is going to be the part that gives you that massive boost to your ROI. And it's playing the best contest, which sounds obvious, but honestly, like the standard DFS wisdom is just very off base on this. It's outdated. I'm sure if you've been following DFS for any time, you've probably heard of the 80-20-10 rule, where it's saying like 80% of your lineup or your buy-in should be in cash, 20% in GPP, and don't risk more than 10% of your overall bankroll. I've been reading those articles for 6+ years now, and the advice just hasn't changed, even though the games have changed significantly. And while that might have been a decent strategy back then when you could just hit optimize and print money at cash games, people have learned that trick. Cash games are very hard to beat, and they frankly should not be part of your strategy until you have a big bankroll and a ton of free time to babysit those lineups. So the first part of this is the best contests for building a bankroll are not cash games. Outside of NFL, I actually don't recommend playing cash at all because there just frankly isn't much, if any, edge there. And you're going to make significantly more money playing GPPs. And by GPPs, we just mean they're guaranteed prize pool contests. They're going to be the larger tournaments where you get significantly more for winning the contest than you do for just making the money. Whereas cash games are those contests where everyone that makes the money doubles up or something along those lines. And so your goal here is to not just play the best contest, but to put as many unique lineups as you can into the most profitable contests. And what are those most profitable contests? Simply put, they are the contests with the lowest buy-in and the highest number of what we call effective entrants. So what does effective entrants mean? Effective entrants is something we made up to really just give people a simple concept to figure out, okay, how tough is this contest on average? And what you do is you take the total number of entries in a contest and then divide it by the entry limit for the contest to see how many people it would take to fill it up if they all were playing the maximum number of entries. And so the higher the number of effective entrants, the more people it would take to max out a contest, and the lower the buy-in, the worse the average player in that contest is going to be, which means, and there's going to be more of those bad players in there, and it's going to mean that it's easier for you to win. And so the reason this is so important is, I guess you can just think of it in another way. How many just DFS pros are there out there? How many people are out there making truly a living playing DFS? I would guess like there's at least hundreds. And then outside of pros, there's a lot of people who are solid players and they're making real money on the side playing DFS. And there are thousands of those. So these players, the top players, the ones that you really are winning in the long run at DFS, are going to play as many contests as they can. So if you're playing a contest with a few hundred effective entrants, it's very likely that a high percent of those are going to either be the pros or the sharp players. And unless you are putting more work and effort into your process, it's going to be very hard to beat them consistently. And that might be an aspiration of yours. You might want to climb the ranks to be one of the top players in the world. And if that's the case, you do at some point have to be comfortable battling those players. But with how many contests there are out there, you simply don't need to do that right away. And you don't need to do that at all if your goal is to make some extra money, some good money on the side. The name of the game is to beat your opponents. So you do that a lot better, a lot easier if your opponents aren't as good. And what I want to stress a point on, because I know we've had questions about this before when we brought up this concept, is that the higher the effective entrants, the higher in general your ROI is going to be, and the easier it is going to be to win. Now, this doesn't mean the easier it's going to be to win that contest, because obviously it's going to be easier to win a contest with 10 players as opposed to one with 10,000. But you don't have to literally come in first place to make good money at these contests, at least at the lower stakes, where the contests have what's called a flat payout structure, meaning they spread the prize pool out pretty evenly from first all the way to the last cash in place. And obviously there's going to be jumps, but there's no massive jumps. It's not like some of these higher stakes contests where first place is 100K or a million, and second place is a tenth of that. And then by the time you get to ninth place, you're barely making any money. Those contests are an entirely different beast. I recommend staying away from those almost forever, unless you really are trying to get to the top of the list and really trying to be one of the best players out there. But those contests are different. For the average contests that we're playing, the ones that I'm talking about, you don't have to actually win them to win money. And so don't get scared away of these contests with a ton of entries, because those are going to be where you have the highest ROI. And yes, there is going to be bigger swings in those contests than in the smaller player pool ones. But as long as you spread out your risk and put in unique lineups into all those contests, the swings don't have to be that crazy. And so one point, just going even further on this, that really does not get talked about enough in DFS, but plays a massive role, is that players who have entered more than $1 million in lifetime contests cannot play any contests on DraftKings or FanDuel with a buy-in of under $3. And so to be clear, they can play a $3 contest, but if it's $2.99, they cannot play that. And so what is the easiest way to avoid those top pros, the ones who are doing this for a living, the ones who you see at the top of the leaderboard and all the big contests like every night? You just don't play you play the contests where they can't play. You play the contests with buy-ins under $3. And this isn't to say there are no good players under those limits, because there are a ton of them. Like I was saying before, there are probably thousands of players who are consistently beating DFS that can still play these sub $3 contests, but there are also a lot of really bad players. And so you just have to be sure that you're playing the contests that have enough bad players that they're still profitable for you. And not just still profitable, but even more profitable than an equivalent contest may be. Because this isn't to say you can't make money playing some of the smaller prize pool contests, some of the higher buy-in things, anything like that. You can, but the swings are going to be bigger. Your ROI is going to be lower. And the best way to consistently win is to pick the best spots. And this is really where that is. And so while the contests with the highest effective entrants do have that highest ROI that I've been talking about, you have to match that up with spreading out your risks. And so this is where there is some nuance to it. This isn't going to be play this exact contest and not this one. There's going to be a balance that we're going to talk about of finding the ones where it's okay, it lets me spread out my risk, but it lets me have a high ROI at the same time. So if all you want to do is maximize your ROI, you can just play single entries. Those are going to be, in general, the highest ROI contests out there. But if you're following our bankroll guidelines, you're putting 5% of your bankroll in, you might just have 5 or 6 lineups out there. And like that, again, in the season, probably should come out ahead, but not guaranteed. And you're just going to have big swings. And what we're trying to do is find that balance of high ROI, lower swings. And so you have to work in some contests with higher entry limits. And honestly, football is one of the best sports because the contests are so big. So there are a ton of great 20-mix contests that you can start out with, that you can kind of use as a foundation at very low stakes to spread out your risk, make sure you've got a lot of shots and some good prizes, and then from there, fill in with those high ROI single entries that are a little bit more focused. From here, I'll just kind of share the summary of these rules, the key points to keep in mind to follow this. And I'm just calling this, the bankroll growth cheat sheet. So the first point is don't put in more than 5% of your bankroll on a single slate. Second is don't put in more than 0.5% of your bankroll on a single entry. Every contest needs to have a unique lineup. Then this last one is getting a little bit more specific on what I was saying with the effective entrance. So if the contest is under $3, meaning those top pros can't play it, I would shoot for 1,000 or more effective entrants. So this would be a single entry contest with 1,000 entrants, or a 3-max contest with 3,000 or more entrants, a 20-max with 20,000, and so on. If you're playing the contests that those top pros can be in, you want to be a bit more careful because, again, they're going to be better than the people at the lower stakes on average. But they're also going to be putting in more entries. So they are going to have a disproportionate effect on the average skill level there. So for those contests above $3 or $3 and above, I'm looking for 2,000 or more effective entrants. The next one is start with the cheapest contests. So it's figuring out, okay, I get an idea of what I'm looking for, but when I'm starting to fill in these contests, when I'm starting to register my contests, I want to start with the cheapest ones. And specifically, point number 6 is building that low risk foundation, because you got to get that balance of don't just fill in with all these single entries and then you have 5 lineups and all your money is riding on that. Find a few cheap 20 max contests to build that foundation, spread out your risk. And I'll show you a few in just a minute. And then from there, fill in with single entries. Once you've gotten those ones, fill in with 3 max, then go to the 20 max, and so on. And this last one is going to be probably a little bit controversial, but it's like ignore cash until you run out of these great contests. With football, there is an argument for playing some cash, but if you're trying to build your bankroll, you're not going to build it faster in cash than you are by targeting these specific contests. And there are a ton of them out there. And something I just want to stress throughout all of this is there's no perfect way to implement this. Like, don't try to, you shouldn't be spending minutes and even trying to pick which contest to enter. What I want to show you is a framework to use when thinking about this. And if you follow these in principle, you will have a higher ROI. You will have less variance in your performance. And just if you get down to a spot where you're not sure which two contests, like which one to pick between two contests, just use your judgment, and it's still going to be much better than what most people do. Is either they look at what has the biggest prize pool and jump into that without realizing that, yeah, all the other sharks are in there and it's going to be super competitive, or they look at the cash games, or they look at just these things that have small prize pools, so they feel like they're going to steadily win, and maybe they will, but just won't add up to much because they're making a few percent of an ROI instead of 20% to 30%, which plenty of people who follow this advice are getting. And so to build your bankroll, follow these rules as best you can, keep them in mind. And now let me just show you how to put this into practice. And so actually Kenneth had said, which contest can I enter that will help me avoid the sharks but still compete for a good top prize? I'm afraid if I enter a 20 plus contest, I'm just donating my bankroll to the sharks of DFS. And honestly, Kenneth, like, this is a pretty sharp observation, because the average player who's getting started is just putting their money into that $20 contest, and they pretty much are donating it to the sharks of DFS. And so these rules, this cheat sheet should give you a very clear guideline of what to target. But to get even more clear than this, I'm going to jump in to DraftKings and just do this. So, all right, let me switch over to my DraftKings account. And so what I'll do is just walk through what this would look like at different for different bankrolls. And so I'll probably do about $250 worth of risk, a bankroll of about 5,000-ish. Got money on FanDuel and other sites, and I don't keep a ton online, but like I'm very comfortable with that amount of risk. But what I'll do is I'll start with a $100 bankroll and work my way up to the $5,000 bankroll and to show what contests I'd pick. So for this $100 bankroll, that's going to be risking about $5, which may not seem like much, but you still can build up a bankroll if you pick the right contest to really spread that out. The only thing I would add on this is, like, at these lower levels, I'm probably going to suggest being a little bit more aggressive. If like I think what I'm going to go to is probably like $7 or maybe $9, right around $10. So that's obviously a higher percent than I recommend. But like, if those few dollars extra make a big difference, I just wouldn't be gambling, to be blunt. So like, keep that in mind. Is like, all right, like entertainment money. We want to win in the long run. And the more serious we take this, the more serious we need to follow the bankroll rules. But what I would say is, even if you're getting more aggressive with a bankroll, still put that extra money in the best contests. So what we'll do here is kind of start by looking at those cheapest contests. Let's go to 2 and under. And I'd mentioned those default, those foundation, really soft contests that still let you spread things out. And on DraftKings, it's this quarter jukebox and the dime package. And so both of these let you put in 20 lineups. I will just build like a quick dummy lineup just as a placeholder here, so I can show you like the actual registration process and all of this. But these are going to be a great way for you to build that base foundation to make sure, okay, I might not be wagering much, but I'm still able to get a good number of lineups in there. And that lets me spread out my risk comfortably. So we got that one there. And then if you're not familiar with this, this is the easiest way to register for contests. We also have an entry editor that makes it really easy for once you reserve your entries to then get the lineups in there. And that just comes as part of SaberSim. So check that out. We've got other videos talking about it, but I'll get back to what I was showing you before. All right, so we got this one, the quarter jukebox. I've got one in there. I'll put 19 more. So that's going to make $5 total. Then this dime package. And you can see this contest has 240,000 people. So divided by 20, it's well over our threshold. And it's at like the lowest stakes. Like this is going to be incredible contest in terms of ROI. And obviously, like, yeah, you're not putting a ton of money into it, but you care about the percent return because the more you're playing, the more you're going to compound. And these small amounts at high ROI really do add up. So between these two, we're going to be at $7. I could stop there, but again, like there's two other contests I want to highlight that are just $1 each. And like, if this makes a difference between whether you play or not, like it's just not, yeah, I just wouldn't play. So we've got these daily dollars. These are single entry contests and they have 23,000, almost 24,000 entries. We got one, with that. And then there's another one here with 6,000. These are gonna be great contests. So I want to get in both of those. So that was $9. If you have 100, $200, this is about what I'll be looking to put in. And now let's talk about going up to, if you have $1,000 and you're trying to risk $50. So, and Jordan, am I going too quick or does this seem like, can you follow along with this?
Yeah, no, this is perfect.
Okay. So for $1,000, we're following that 5% rule. We're going to risk around $50. And no contest will have a buy-in of more than $5. So let's look at what we've got here.
And while you're pulling that up, we did get another question that came in, and Jim said, do you recommend max entering your contest? And I'm sure as we get a little bit further that you were going to talk a bit about that, but any thoughts there?
Yeah, and so I will talk about that. You don't have to, but like I always try to max out a contest before moving on to the next one. So like I view this as a hierarchy of we're saying, okay, these are the best contests. And sure, there's going to be like some are pretty close in ROI and this and that, but like there's going to be tiers of it where like I just went through what I think honestly like the highest ROI contests on the week are going to be. And so I wouldn't jump to this next tier until I've maxed something out. But like if I was only putting in 10 lives and 20 max, that's not a big deal. That's fine. But like you wouldn't really want to be putting in one lineup in like a 150 max, things like that. Like, because there's probably just gonna be better ways for you to get down that money in higher ROI contests. So yeah, don't feel like you have to max out a contest, but if you don't, just make sure there's not a better way to spread out that money. There's an example that I'll get to in a little bit that talks about that. So for this is where it's going to get a little interesting. So we did some single entries. We did some 20 max, and this first down, like I normally would like NFL week 1, the contests are going to be huge. NFL contests in general are going to be big. So there's a lot of options here. In a sport like baseball, I would be looking at single entries pretty quickly. But like this 20 entry, $1 contest, 300,000 people, super soft contest. I'm going to put 20 lineups in that. So then that gets us to like $29. And I'll see what single entry contests I can get to here. And what I'll do once that goes through is I can change this over here to say, okay, for single entries, I'm going to play up to $5 at this tier. So I'm going to put 5 in. I'm going to type in single, and this will bring up those single entries. And like I had said before, start from the cheapest and work your way up. So I'm already in these two. This one isn't a single entry, just came up because single's in the name. But let's look at these. So we've got 2 pylons. These are $3 contests. good size. So I'll do those. And $5 contest, good size. Like again, these are the top players can play and will be playing these, but when there's thousands and thousands of other players and the cost is low, I'm okay playing this. So this is going to get me $11 more. So that brings us to $40 now. We're trying to shoot for around 50. And now, yeah, this is when I'd be looking at this 3 max. Divide by 3. So this is about like 8,000 effective entries. So we'll do 3. Now we're at $43. And I'll just see if there's any other good 3 max contests. And the way I would do this is just type in 3 entry. This won't work 100% of the time, but most of these contests will say the entry limit in the title. Sorry, we're already in this one. Then let's go up to the triple option, divide by 3. And yeah, it's a little over 5,000 effective entrants. Put in 3 entries there, an extra 9. And we now have $52 in. So that's going to be about what I would do if I had $1,000 bankroll. Now let's show where do I go from here if you had twice the bankroll and I was trying to risk about $100. So looking around, we've got a couple, like I'm still going to look at these 3 entry max. I'm probably going to check out the single entries after that and then look at some 20 max. So like we see 2 right here. $5. So they're again above that $3 threshold. This one has about 12,000, so a little less than 4,000 effective entrants. I'm definitely going to enter that. This one down here, though, it's got a little over 2,000. So divide by 3, that's about 800 effective entrants. For the over $3 contests, I really do want to have that 2,000 effective entrants line because this isn't that far over the limit in terms of dollar amount, and it's not a super high entry. I'd be a little bit more open to playing it, but I'm pretty confident that we can still find better options than this. So like this is one that maybe keep in the back of my mind, but I'm not going to target this first because again, when you think about it, this doesn't have to be, especially when we're still over a week away and like there's already a few hundred entrants in it. Like I think this is actually going to be sharper than you would expect for that buy-in. And that's what that effective entrance shorthand helps you figure out. Sorry, we got that in there. That brings us to $67 at a $2,000 bankroll. 0.5% of that is $10. So that's about the limit we'll have for single entries. And there actually aren't any new ones at this. The next one up, I think, is at $12. So let's then check 20 entry. And we've got a few options here. So this play action just immediately jumps out at me because these ones down here. So the smaller play action it's at $3. So again, the sharp players can play that. So I want 2,000 plus effective entrants. This is at about 1,000. Not a horrible contest, but not one I'm going to jump into right away. These two are below it. And yeah, this one, the NFL safety, because it's below that $3 threshold, these are going to be like pretty similar in my head of like which one I would rather play. But again, there's no hard and fast rule, but I'm going to avoid those ones because I still think we're going to find plenty of good opportunities here. So this has 200,000 entrants. I can get $60 more into that. And so that actually would put me over the limit because I think I was at 67 before. If I put 20 in here, this would bring me to $127. And this is one of those cases, Jim, where if I was trying to follow that guideline specifically, I would have only put in 11. And that would have gotten me to 100 on the dot. And that's where it's like, if it's the last contest I'm entering, then I'll be okay with not maxing it out because I'm basically saying this is the best one on the board. Let me go after that. And so with this one, this does put me up into the other, a bit more than I want to wager at that level. But so yeah, that's where I would be comfortable wagering a bit less. And so now I'll just finish it out with like what I'm actually going to do, which is again, probably just wagering around $250. Might go a bit more aggressive later, but we'll see. But for now, this is a safe assumption. So $5,000 bankroll, risking $250. Yeah, again, would have been maxing this out, which we got to. And then let's check out some of those higher dollar single entries. And so this would be $25 is what I would want to stick to for this. And there's some that are super close to it. But let's just look what we got here. So these fair catches, you have one here, and one here. And 30,000 entrants, 5,000 entrants. It's a single entry. Yeah, I'm going to do both of those. So that'll get me $24. For the blind side, this technically violates the 0.5%, but it's super close. And these aren't hard and fast rules. These are meant to be guidelines. So with that in mind, I will add one. I'll add one entry to the bigger one. It's a little over twice the size, or actually about exactly twice the size of this other one. And that's fine. Like putting another in this wouldn't be that big of a deal, but I would prefer to play the mini max. And I will have if I play this and the mini max, I'll go a little bit over. So just to get right there, I'll stick with this. So let's check out the mini max. So this one's awesome because if you look in baseball, the mini max is it's usually $1 or 50 cents, and it's on DraftKings. It's the cheapest contest that you can do 150 lineups in. So it's a great way to get experience with mass multi-entry. The problem is they usually don't have massive prize pools. So on baseball, it's usually gonna have 20-ish thousand entrants. So when you divide by 150, that is not that many people. That's an effective entrance of less than 200. And in a contest with that high of an entry limit, that's where effective entrance isn't a perfect number, because it in the other contests, not everyone's going to max it out. So you're going to have a weaker field on average. But in the mini max, a casual player is not just going to put in one lineup in this contest. Maybe they will, but you're going to get all of the sharp players maxing this out. And so it's just a much harder contest than it may look. But with football, the contests are massive. And so we can actually do this one and still follow the rule of being over 1,000 effective entrants because it's so big. So I'll put in 150 there, which gets me $75. So I think right now I'm at 243. I'll probably go back in, add in that other blind side, go a little bit over. But yeah, that's basically the process. And I hope through showing this, you get that it's not as though this is some black and white rule you have to follow exactly. These are guidelines that will point you to the most profitable contests. And this, with me narrating it, I don't know, maybe it took 10 minutes. Once you get this down, it doesn't even take that long. There's no other thing you're going to do for your game that will have a bigger impact on your ROI than just putting your money into the best contests out there. And they are not what people assume they are. Look at some of these right here. So people see this mini play action. It is a $3 entry fee. Oh, okay, 20 max contest, $3. That's pretty soft. Top pros can play that. There's less than 2,000 entrants. So divided by 20, 100 players could max this out. And there's going to be sharp players in there. So it's these smaller prize pool contests, people often feel are going to be a great way to win money. But if you're not careful, that doesn't have to be the case. And oftentimes they're going to be much harder than some of these bigger contests. So I just really can't exaggerate how powerful this is, because you're able to reduce your variance and increase your ROI without having to actually get better at DFS. And I don't want you to just stop here. This will be definitely the best time investment you can make in DFS. But once you get this down, keep pushing it, keep working to improve your game. You don't want to just rest on your laurels because you found the shortcut to winning, or winning at least more easily or more frequently. But check out these office hours that Jordan hosts every day of the week, Monday through Friday. Check out those other videos that we have. Really try to level up your game, but don't mess with that stuff until you have these basics down. Because I know I'm beating a dead horse on this, but there is no faster way to improve your results than just playing the right contests. And it's just the easiest way to think about it is there's no free lunch, and DFS is getting harder and harder, but this is as close to free money as it gets in DFS. And at the end of the day, we play DFS to make some cash on the side for sure, but we also like the excitement it brings. So like if you do want to punt off some lineups in the Millie Maker, things like that, that's fine. Treat that though as a lottery ticket. Like treat that as, okay, like here's my bankroll. Here's what I'm willing to invest to really try to build something out of this, to make some extra cash. And then here's my gambling money, and keep them separate. Don't treat them the same. Say, I'm willing to punt off $20 a week on a super long shot lottery ticket. That's a bit more fun than the Powerball. But if I'm trying to make a go at it in DFS and win some extra money on the side consistently, treat your bankroll seriously, put it in the right contest. And this is really going to be the best way to do that. So if you're not using SaberSim already, which if you're watching this live, you probably are, but if you aren't using it already, be sure to check us out, because there are no other DFS tools that'll make it as easy to not just actually follow what we talked about today by making it easy to get your entries in there, manage all those lineups, but actually build the best lineups out there, because we offer the only complete game simulator on the market, as well as the only optimizer that actually understands upside. And what that means is that instead of spending hours programming all kinds of rules and groups and settings, you can actually invest your time improving your lineups, because we have the best projections, we have the best optimizer, and we're able to build you a strong foundation of high upside lineups out of the box, so you can focus your time improving your lineups rather than fighting with outdated tools. To sign up for that trial, just head over to sabersim.com. You can try it out for free for 7 days. Let us know what you think. But for now, I will just jump into questions. Jordan, you want to go over that last slide?
Yeah. Oh, there we go.
All right. So, yeah, just to follow up on Jim's question, just saying, I was just wondering if there was a disadvantage to.
Oh, we both clicked it.
All right. I was just wondering if there's a disadvantage to not max entering, and yeah, like there inherently, no, there's not a disadvantage to not max entering a contest. It does mean like this is where it gets like some of the more casual players will feel as though like if you're not maxing out a contest, you don't have a chance of winning. And sure, like if you're in a 150 max contest and you're not putting in 150 lineups, and all these pros are, yes, just by like math, they're going to win significantly more frequently. If you put in one, they put in 150. Assuming you're the same skill level, which is probably not a great assumption, but like assuming you are, they're going to win about 150 times more frequently. But they're risking 150 times more. So like you can still have a positive ROI in these contests without maxing them out. But the point I want to just reiterate for people who might not have caught it when I was making is that like don't half enter a contest until you're sure that there aren't better contests for you to be entering in. So that's why I'm always going to look at the single entries. I always look at the 3 maxes before like half filling a 20 max or a 150 max. But especially a 150 max, like those are ones where it's like, yeah, toss in a few lineups as a gamble if you want in some of those massive contests. But other than that, I would just focus on the ones where I really can max it out. Jump over to solid picks. So rookie question, MLB is my best sport. How is NFL different? This is one that we're going to have actually a week of NFL content next week for the first week of football. There's a lot more to it than I could just cover in this one, but I just wanted to kind of give you guys a heads up that there's a lot of football content coming. We do have some other videos already up there. But yeah, Monday through Friday, we're going to have a new video on a different NFL concept. We're going to cover GPP strategy, showdown strategy, cash strategy. We're going to talk about using cheat sheets when you play. We're going to give you a really strong foundation to start with. So check that out if you do have questions about making the transition to NFL.
Yeah. And one thing there, I will say, if you're good at baseball and you found some success playing baseball, you will probably find that translates pretty well over to NFL. It's a sport where correlation is crucial. It's a high variance sport as well. A lot of the same concepts and strategies overall can transition pretty well from baseball to football. So
Yeah, for sure. It's like the fundamentals of all sports are the same. It's like you got to pay attention to variance, you got to pay attention to correlations, you have to pay attention to ownership. They just have different weights in different sports. Like in baseball and football, correlations are much stronger, so they're going to be play a bigger role. And so, yeah, like Jordan's saying, if you're familiar and do well with baseball, this would be a much easier transition to get into football than it would be to get into, say, basketball. And it doesn't hurt that the contests are bigger and generally softer than in baseball. So that's like NFL is a great. If you haven't done it much, it's a great sport to get started with. So yeah, Kenneth just asked, how safe is the 100K mini max with 150 entries? And so yeah, that I mean, safe is kind of a tough phrasing. So if you want to clarify in the chat, Kenneth, on what you mean by safe, that'd be helpful. But like that's a contest where with that many entries, so it's 50 cents to enter, and the prize pool is 100K. There's obviously rake, but like that means there's going to be more than 200,000 entrants in it. So just by using that rule of thumb of saying, okay, max 150 entries, entrance is 200,000, then we can just do some simple math and say, okay, 200,000 divided by 150, that gives us an effective number of entrants of 1,333. So generally speaking, I would be very comfortable playing any contest that is under $3 buy-in with more than 1,000 effective entrants. This meets that. Again, it does have 150 max entry limit, so you do want us to be a little bit more cautious with those ones because the pros are going to target that, the serious players are going to target that much more than the casual players. But yeah, I would definitely still be comfortable playing this. That being said, you're going to have bigger swings because there's 200,000 entrants, and that's kind of the name of the game in football. Is the best contests have a lot of entrants, and to balance that out, that's why you want to just have a unique lineup in each of your entries, because you just got to balance it out. And like I know the top pros, they're not going to do that, and that's fine. Like you do give up a few percent of theoretical edge by having unique lineups and everything you play, but we're not doing this. We don't have multi-million-dollar bankrolls. We're trying to be in this every week and try to steadily grow that bankroll. And giving up a couple percent is a great way of getting some extra insurance that like I'm not going to get wiped out this week. I mean, I know talking with Giant Squid, there was that big Millie Maker contest for baseball the other night, and it was like $2,500 per entry, maximum 33 entries, and like he doesn't frankly care about the swings, and so he's going to diversify, but he's not doing it just to lower his risk, and so like literally none of his lineups cashed, and so that just flushed a little over 80K down the toilet. But it was a risk he was comfortable making. For us, we might not be as comfortable with those risks, and so that's why it's good looking at that. And then yeah, Kenneth followed up just saying, I had no problem entering the 150 max, but a lot of times I'll enter every 10 cent 20 max and I'll have like 200 lines going. And so yeah, this is one of the difficulties of following the advice I gave out there. Is like you're going to have a lot of lineups. I think it's a solvable problem. If you're doing everything by hand, if you're not using an optimizer, like, yeah, you're not going to be able to do this many lineups. But I don't think many people watching this are in that camp. And so what I would say is that manually messing with Excel spreadsheets to get your entries in and do all that, like it's a pain in the ass. That's why we built the entry editor with Late Swap as part of SaberSim. And that is something that will make it super easy to just get your lineups in there. You can build hundreds of lineups quickly, manage your exposures, do all that. Then with just a few clicks, get those into your entries, then upload it to whatever site you're playing on. So yeah, like this is going to be hard to follow if you're not using that tool. As the time of this recording, that tool is a $19 a month add-on to SaberSim. But before the weekend, we are going to, this is kind of spoiler alert, we're going to be giving that away to all SaberSim subscribers. So if you just bought it, you're going to be getting a refund. And everyone who is a SaberSim subscriber will get access to the entry editor. because as we've gone through all this, like as we've gotten ready for the NFL season, as we've really thought about our recommendations for what contests to play and how to do it, you need to use that tool. You need to use the entry editor because it's going to take so much time to manage that many lineups otherwise. So check out that tool and it'll make your life a lot easier. I know we've got some videos on it as well. But yeah, anything coming through on Slack, Jordan?
I have not seen anything. No.
Awesome.
Cool.
Do you have anything to add or anything that you think we could expand on?
No, I think that was helpful. I think just to that last point, 200 lineups. A lot of times it can feel like a lot, but when you're using SaberSim's tools to edit your exposures and to use the entry editor to get your lineups actually into the contests, there ends up not really being a lot of a practical difference between managing even 20 to 30 lineups than there is to your 200 lineups if you're playing a bunch of 20 maxes and 150 maxes. So I think that's a lot of the power of the tools. It makes max entering these contests easy. It makes it quick. And if you've been using SaberSim and mostly experimenting with maybe some of the single entry, 3 entry max, even some of the 20 maxes, football can be a really good opportunity to start exploring playing additional lineups if your bankroll can support it. Yeah. Spread out your risk a little bit more, because if you're already familiar with playing multiple lineups at all, the jump to a lot more lineups is not as difficult to manage as I think people sometimes think. So,
yeah, no, that's a really good point. It's like once you learn, I showed the lineup reservation process. That's basically the first step. Jordan has some videos where he shows, okay, like once you do that, how do you get your lineups into those entries? And that's the first sort of aha moment that makes DFS a lot easier. If you're just like building 20 lineups and uploading those to DraftKings, and then when you go to register for contests, you pick the ones you want to enter, like that just sucks. And it's just like not a practical way of scaling up your DFS play. So once you learn how to manipulate the entries file, which really just isn't that hard with our entry editor, it just unlocks a lot of possibilities. And it just shows that, yeah, building hundreds of lineups, frankly, isn't really any harder than building 20. The same principles apply. Tools work the same way if you use the right tools. And I'm obviously biased on this, but like I haven't seen anyone else with a tool like our entry editor that makes it super easy to put the right lineups in the right contests and to apply them the way you want them. So if you guys haven't checked that out yet, please do. And I guarantee this will make all of it come together very easily. But yeah, like I was saying, there just simply isn't a better way, a faster way to improve your results in DFS. And as Jordan had touched on, if you typically only do a few lineups, NFL really is a perfect sport to experiment with this because the contests are so big and so profitable. If you were messing around like at late season baseball, yeah, when you start entering more contests and more entries into contests, you have to make some sacrifices in the quality of the contests you're targeting. Like the criteria I put up there, the 1,000 effective entrants, there's not a ton of contests that hit that. And so that's when like looking at cash games can be okay. Or you might have to just make some sacrifice and say, hey, this one only has 500 effective entrants. I'm going to spend some more time really honing in my process. That's a sacrifice you're going to have to make. But for football, you just don't have to make that sacrifice because there are so many great contests. And that's why it's like, yeah, cash games can be good in football, but the GPPs are amazing. And I think it would be crazy to try to play those when there's just so much money out there in these really beatable contests. Yeah, if anyone else has any other questions, Jordan and I will be hanging around in Slack to answer them. And I hope this helps. Like I said, we're going to be putting out a new video every day of the week for week 1 of NFL, covering everything from GPP strategy to cash game strategy to showdowns to using cheat sheets and whatever else may come up. We've got a ton of content planned for NFL season. If you have any suggestions, any questions, as always, don't hesitate to reach out to me directly at andy@sabersim.com or emailing support@sabersim.com or just pinging Jordan in Slack. We're doing everything we can to make this your most profitable NFL season yet. So let us know how we can do that. In the meantime, though, Thanks and good luck, everybody.
See ya.